Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. So let's talk about the unique FOMO of the narcissistic relationship. Okay, so what am I talking about? Okay, at this point, if a decidedly unhip old lady like me knows what FOMO is, it's mainstream. Okay, but if you are one of the few out there who doesn't, FOMO stands for fear of missing out. It's that anxiety people get, especially, for example, when they look at social media and they get the sense that they're sort of missing out on something, missing out on fun or cool events. And so they try as much as they can to show up to things to abate that fear, even if they don't really want to be bothered or leave the house, but the fear of missing out on something sort of spectacular or something fun just sort of pushes them to join. I mean, FOMO has always been a thing, even before there was a FOMO term, even before social media. And I honestly think there should be something called IWAT. It wasn't all that. After a person kind of gets home and recognizes that they wasted a day or an evening or money on something because they were so afraid of missing out, and they come home and recognize it wasn't all that. But I think narcissistic relationships have a unique form of FOMO. Let's call it Fonte, fear of not trying everything. Now, we know the basic architecture of the narcissistic relationship. They love bomb, you fall for it, then they devalue you, it gets confusing. Some days they're really on, it feels great. Many days they're off, it feels awful. The relationship goes back and forth between sometimes seductive, sometimes even a little fun, but mostly angry and invalidating. And you're forever chasing those good days and spend a lot of your time confused as hell. Now, over time, you blame yourself trying to make sense out of the chaos, and you try everything to make it work. You don't ask for your needs to be met. You try to be really fun and lighthearted all the time. You don't call out bad behavior. You try to love bomb them, and you absolutely exhaust yourself. Narcissistic people have a really well-honed ability to leave you feeling as though they kind of always have one foot out of the door, as though if you do or say the wrong thing, if you question their behavior, then maybe they'll leave. And they kind of dangle leaving or walking out or calling it quits as a sort of quiet threat. I don't know if I'm feeling a relationship now. I have a lot going on and you seem to need a lot. Or they'll say something like, ugh, this is more stress than I want. Or they'll say, I don't need all this drama. Or they'll say, I don't like having my life questioned. Sound familiar? So then you stop questioning them. You silence yourself. So your carpet is now made of eggshells and you tread very lightly. You are also convinced that if you do, your relationship does end, that the next person is going to get this great new version of them. The love bombing may be etched on your memory, and you can already imagine the next person getting the charm and the charisma and the sex appeal and the love bombing. It's an awful feeling. So you keep trying harder so they don't go away. But at the same time, you really are burning out on the relationship. You're tired of the manipulation, the gaslighting, the shady behavior, the lying, the betrayal, but you're still not sure. Did you try everything? But you don't let go. And that's where we get to this sort of different kind of FOMO, this Fonte, as I'm calling it, the fear of not trying everything, sort of the fear of regret. And I truly believe that it is much worse than any fear of missing out. It's interesting. There's something almost morbid because many, many people I've worked with who've had narcissistic relationships and tell me when their relationship is done, and I completely get when they say this, they'll say, you know what, the grief over this relationship ending is overwhelming. And this would actually almost be easier grief if someone had passed away. I'd be grieving differently, but the not knowing, the thinking I could have done something more or different, and they're still walking around. So there's an idea that I could, the idea that they're still moving on and moving through the world and I'm still stuck. It feels awful. These aren't people, bad people thinking this. Like, this is the idea that someone could move forward and completely forget about you and not think of you can really feel haunting. The euphoric recall is rough. Your mind goes back to every pristine, love-bombed moment, and somehow you conveniently forget the awful moments. that fear of regret is so potent, and people don't like it. None of us like a fear of regret, right? Unfortunately, no matter what you do, you're not going to be the one to change them. And that can be a really bitter pill to swallow. So as the relationship may slowly come to an end, whomever ends it, them or you, the not narcissistic person in the relationship may look back and say, did I try enough? Did I do enough? Should we have done a few more sessions of couples therapy, or should we have even done couples therapy in the first place? Should I have just let that time they cheated on me go? It wasn't that big a deal. Was I being unrealistic in my expectations for the relationship? Should I just have forgiven them? And that fear of not trying everything keeps you up at night. Listen, I am not a psychic and I cannot look into or predict the future, but I do understand narcissistic relationships. And one thing I can promise you is that they really would not have changed no matter which of those things you did differently. So unless you wanted to remain and be a repository of their cruelty for the rest of your days, then there was nothing you could have done other than to put up and shut up. That's not really a life, is it? I can tell you, though, the one thing that you are going to regret. Let's say you do get back together with them and you get back together. The hoovering works, or you manage to draw them back into the relationship. You'll have a new mini love bombing phase. That's how that goes. And then before you know it, it'll be back to business as usual. Maybe you'll stay another 6 months in the relationship, or 6 years, or 20 years, and it will be exactly the same. Gaslighted, manipulated, invalidated, dismissed. You want to regret something? How about not getting those years back if you do go back in? I understand that fear of the unknown, or what if the new person gets a better version of them? There is no better version. There may be that love bombed moment that the two of them have, and you have to see that on social media and it'll feel awful. But the new person is going to get the same version. And sure, that new person may have different kinds of arguments with them and different issues, but it'll still be the same hollowed out and exhausting trip that you were on. I recognize that every narcissistic relationship has a rock bottom. It's a point you get to at which you cannot unsee what's happening in this relationship. And at that moment, it may be a little easier to leave or watch them leave, right? There may be less rumination about what else could I do? Did I try everything? But that can take a long time and a lot of life, and time may get wasted on your journey to your rock bottom. Though I have even heard some really powerful stories from people in their 70s and 80s who listened to content about narcissism and were able to make the leap after 50 and 60 years in these relationships, which I actually think is quite amazing. I would love for you to see all of these patterns earlier, and give up the distorted dream that somehow there was something else you could have tried. At least we can try to help you push that accelerator to get to that rock bottom, so that if the relationship doesn't work out, it'll feel a little easier. I get it. None of us want the stain of regret on us, so we keep pushing ourselves. The trauma bonds turn regret into something terrible. The trauma bonding confuses us enough, and it can complicate and sort of twist the regret into something that makes it feel impossible to leave. So instead of the fear of not trying everything, the one place you don't want to end up is FOWTMY, the fear of wasting too many years. It's not nearly as catchy, fought me, but it's a hell of a lot more tragic. So all that FOMO, what am I missing? There's a different kind of FOMO in these relationships, and people saying, I'm going to hang in longer because maybe I didn't try everything. In essence, it means you're future faking yourself. And the fact is that none of us has forever. Time is a very precious resource, and so is life. How much of it do you want to spend being gaslighted and invalidated? Thanks again.